This is an ad by BetterHelp. BetterHelp recently surveyed over 16,000 people and found that while 75% of people believe it's wise to seek support, only 27% of Americans are in therapy, and people stay silent to avoid being judged. BetterHelp has over 10 years of experience matching you with the right therapist. Because we're all better with help. Visit BetterHelp.com/stopthestigma for their first ever State of Stigma report, the latest in mental health research.
He's a police sergeant. He was involved in a deadly shooting. He developed post-traumatic stress disorder, self-medicated with alcohol, a DWI arrest. And he was able to rehabilitate his career and get promoted. Welcome to the Law Enforcement Today radio show. I'm your host. My name's John J. Wiley. In addition to being a radio broadcaster, I'm a retired police sergeant. For the latest news articles and much more, check out our website, letradioshow.com. In the Law Enforcement Today show, we'll be joined by special guests. We'll be talking about their experiences and issues affecting law enforcement officers, first responders, their families, their community, and victims of horrendous crimes. Be sure to like us on Facebook. Our page is Law Enforcement Today Radio Show. Check out the daily articles on our website, letradioshow.com. And while you're there, download our free app. We're all over social media. Be sure to like and follow our Facebook page, Law Enforcement Today Radio Show. We're on Twitter. Follow us at LET Radio Show Podcast. And on Instagram, look for LET Radio Show Podcast. Of course, don't forget our website, letradioshow.com. See you there. Contact us from Montana. We have Jeff Stoval on the phone. Jeff is an active duty law enforcement officer. I believe he has the current rank of sergeant. That may change in the near future. And as I said, he's active. So usually we're not allowed to say what agency they work for. He, on the other hand, has the ability to say he works for the Billings Police Department in Billings, Montana. Jeff, first of all, thanks so much for your service. Secondly, thanks for being a guest on the show. Very much appreciated.
Well, thank you. It's an honor and a privilege, and I appreciate you having me.
You are, in many ways, an example of miracles, that miracles happen among us all the time. And people will understand the reasons why we say it in a moment. But if you are like a lot of people and you automatically think someone gets arrested for DWI, or operating under the influence, whatever the legality is in your state, you want to throw the book at them. Jeff is a perfect example of what often leads to that and how people recover from that. Jeff, I got to tell you, before we go into it, Billings, Montana. By the way, I watch Yellowstone, so I'm kind of an expert on Montana now all of a sudden.
Hey, there you go.
In 1883 and 1923, my wife and I don't miss an episode. But besides being a beautiful area, people would think right away, and we don't do politics on the show, they would think, hey, it's a very conservative area, and most conservatives, they will not do progressive things. And if a police officer gets arrested for DWI, their career is over.
Yeah, correct.
But that's not been the case with your agency.
No, it hasn't. I'm a testimony to that. I was arrested for DUI in 2020 after going through some stuff with an officer-involved shooting, with a divorce, with kind of the personal and professional life kind of button heads, and just kind of an explosion in my life. So I was given a second chance, and I'm doing everything I can to make sure that I'm an example of what a second chance is and how you can best take advantage of it.
One of the things that the miracle of this is not lost on me, and I'm not an expert in police suicide, but there seems to be a few things that are in common, and it's been a problem since I was a rookie, since before then, which is a long time ago. PTSD is an issue for many of these. Substance abuse, with self-medicating with alcohol, which is a depressant, is another issue. A lot of these, and these are two red flags for you. Marital, relationship, personal problems is another one, and disciplinary problems. When all those collide, quite often the end result is suicide, and yet you are here and you're still in a job.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a there was a time right after my DUI where suicide almost took me. So I've been there. I've lived it. I've pushed through it. There's been so many different factors as far as, with support system, whether it's friends, whether it's family, whether it's, my faith in God, so many different things that help push me through it. But yeah, it almost got me. And, knowing that Montana is, there's the stigma is real here. And we're constantly as a state, not just professionally as law enforcement, but just as a state altogether, we're consistently in the top 3 of suicide here. So it's real, it's prevalent, and it's something that I had to overcome myself.
It's been a big, big issue for law enforcement, for other first responders and military for a very, very long time. Before we get into your throes with alcohol abuse, post-traumatic stress, all those sorts of things, there was an incident in your career that was kind of a turning point for you. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, November 17th of 2017, actually. We were sent to a domestic violence situation. We had a suspect who repeatedly came back to the point of he came back and rammed the victim's car, threatened her life. That we had a pursuit that ensued, and ultimately we were able to kind of get his vehicle stopped in a parking lot, and a standoff occurred. We, verbally tried to communicate with him, introduced some chemicals, pepper spray to try and get him out of the vehicle, and everything kind of broke down to the point of where he backed his vehicle into some other cars, and then put it in drive, and then tried to run over two of our police officers, one being my sergeant at that time, and one actually was the training officer that I was in charge of training at that time. So we, opened fire, and we're put in that situation, and ultimately had to take a life, which is one of the worst, biggest nightmares that an officer has to go through. It's something that you don't ever go into work, wishing for, wanting to do. It's something that we don't want to do. It's something that we, it's our nightmare. It is. So I had to live that night, and it took my career on a different path for a while.
And I'm sorry that you had to go through that. I'm sorry the other ones had to go through that. Some things you said that really, I think people really need to hear more about this person, and I don't want to talk about them. They made choices, they made decisions, and if they had maybe not done 50 different decisions, they'd still be alive today. It wasn't totally in your hands. You did what you had to do to survive and for the others to survive. But this person had choices, and they made choices.
Yes. Yeah, it was anywhere from, de-escalation. There's so much focus on that across the country right now. It's something we tried to do. We tried to talk, through the window of the car, to the point that there was a window that was slightly rolled down, so they were able to hear us. We continued that for several minutes, to the point of then deciding that, it's time we're going to introduce some pepper spray to try and get them out of the car. We did that. So we introduced some other chemicals to try and de-escalate that way. And the decision was made. There was a visual confirmation between the suspect and us. He looked directly at us and put the vehicle in reverse, backed out, looked at us again, put it in drive, and then drove directly at our officers. So several choices that were made. And again, we were forced into that position. Again, not something that we ever wanted to do. And, the aftermath of it, I'll tell you, it sucks. Just raw. It sucks. It's tough. It's something that haunted me for a long time and affected me in ways that the day that I signed up to be a police officer, I never knew it would affect me in that way. I was sitting back the other day and watching a TV show, or we were watching the Sergeant, and it's funny that, it always comes up and it says, viewer discretion advised.
Yeah, and I bail immediately. I'm telling you right now, Jeff, I'm not a tough guy. I bail out of those very quickly.
Yeah. And it's funny when you get into law enforcement, there's not a parental advisory. That explicit content, that is real life for us. That's what we live day in and day out. We live through the trauma. We work through the trauma. We see everybody on their worst day. We wear how many different hats in a day, from a police officer to a counselor to a parent to a financial advisor to, you name it, we do it, to a doctor. We wear those hats every day, and we see the trauma firsthand. We're getting our hands dirty in that, and we don't get that parental advisory. So knowing on the backside of things, mental health comes huge into play. Doing that over 25 years, 20 to 25 years, seeing, 800 plus the statistic, 800 plus critical incidents that a law enforcement or first responder sees, to your normal everyday citizen sees 3.
Yeah, it's a big difference.
That's when mental health comes in. Yeah,
we're talking with Jeff Stoval. He's an active duty police sergeant in Billings, Montana. When we return, we're going to talk about the PTSD that he developed, this substance abuse with self-medicating with alcohol, and, disaster struck, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. Don't go anywhere. This is a Law Enforcement Show. We'll be right back. My wife, the boss, and I have teamed up for a brand new podcast. It's called Haunting or Not. We combine traditional ghost stories with a little bit of comedy and a true crime aspect to talking about these. Are they real or are they bogus? That's the Haunting or Not podcast featuring myself and my wife, the boss. Be sure to look for it wherever podcasts are served. It's called Haunting or Not.
I am Meg Marie O'Rourke from Harmony with Food. Do you ever wonder what foods you should or should not be consuming based on your own unique needs? At Harmony with Food, we are now able to determine exactly what foods we should or should not be consuming through advanced testing. Test, don't guess is the motto at Harmony with Food's BioUnique Boutique program. It has never been easier than now to determine what food, drinks, and supplements you need for your individualized needs. Head over to harmonywithfood.com and click on the testing tab.
Returning to our conversation with Jeff Stoval, police sergeant in Billings, Montana. He was involved in a deadly shooting back, I believe it was in 2017, and developed post-traumatic stress disorder. We're going to talk about that, how it led to abuse of alcohol, which led to a DUI arrest. Oh, but there's an unexpected twist to that. I got to say this, Jeff. I was married once, divorced once. I'm remarried. I've been married almost 25 years and met my wife long after retiring from police work. But many things about me are still, we joke, I'm damaged goods, but I'm okay with that. I accept that I'm not going to be like I was before this job. I was in 4 officer-involved shootings in a little more than 11 years, and fortunately, everyone survived. The first 2, I never fired a shot back, but all of them left an effect on me. And when you talked about yours, it left a profound effect on you, didn't it?
It did. Absolutely. Absolutely did. It's just thinking about yours there, 4 of them, it's compound interest, and it's not always just officer-involved shooting. It's, seeing, an infant death or the carnage from a car crash. But all that stuff is it's compound interest on the mental health of us in law enforcement or us first responders altogether. That was part of it. I was 7 years into being a police officer when I got into my shooting, and that was kind of the tip of the iceberg. That's what kind of set it off. That lit the fuse, and we get to the point of PTSD and an explosion in my life. Going into that. Again, that day was kind of normal. It was something you don't expect, and you don't think your normal PFMA, as we call them here in Montana, or domestic violence, is going to end in a deadly shooting. But the saying goes that those can be some of the most deadliest shootings or deadliest situations, and it ended up in a shooting.
I've got to say this. In my case, anger became a real issue. There was many other symptoms, but anger really got in the way of my marriage. Correct. How long after the incident did you start developing unwanted behavior?
Honestly, it was the day that I came home. No fault of her own. I won't put it on her at this point, but she didn't know how to react when I came home. When I made the phone call and told her I was just involved in a shooting, I'm okay. And we left it at that, and she hung up the phone without saying goodbye. When I came home that day, it wasn't I need to sit down and talk. I need to lay this out for you. It was kind of I don't really want to hear too much about it. I got to go to work. And so in turn, what did I do? I opened the fridge up, and there sat a 12-pack of beer, and that became my therapy for a while. That became my best friend. That was my escape. That was my adrenaline rush when I was away from work, was to drink until I blacked out. And then the memories of feeling alone, the memories of the shooting, some of the stuff I experienced in the dreams. When I was in a shooting, I started dreaming that I was shooting my children. And just kind of dealing with that, I'd wake up in a sweat and just soak in my bed. And what did I do? I went back to my fridge, and it was beer. Then it turned into whiskey, and we continued on from there.
I get it. I get the progression. A lot of people would say, and I can relate so much to the nightmares, and some of them are very much connected to the incidents I was involved in. Many of the worst ones had nothing to do with it, but there was always an underlying. I never had those before.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and there's a dream that I talked to my dad about. My dad was a police officer for 36 years before I was, and I talked to him before getting into law enforcement, and he said, there's always a dream where you have to point a gun and you pull the trigger and you can't pull it hard enough, or the bullet just falls out of the front of the gun. It dribbles out
the end like it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I had those, and that was kind of expected. I was ready for it. But, when it hits home and it starts affecting your family, and when it gets to that personal side of your children, they're your lifeblood. Right. They're a part of you. And when it affects them and you start having dreams about shooting your own children, it's just something you don't want to live with. So I went to alcohol because it made me forget it. It made me angry, though, because I was alone, dealing with it alone. But then on the other side of it, I was the tough guy, right? I can get through this. I played football my whole life. I work out. I'm a good sized guy. I got tattoos, and I'm a cop, right? I'm on the SWAT team. I'm getting ready to work for the U.S. Marshals Task Force through Billings PD, and I'm one of those tough guys. So I can push through this. So I can just push it away. I can tuck it down, put it in that cabinet, and then I can just drink the rest of it away. So that was my approach to it, and that's where that behavior started.
I can understand all of that. And the other thing is, this is the nighttime stuff, and that's part of the equation. What we're not talking about is the daytime while you're awake, because it'd be great if it was just nighttime disturbances. I want to say great. Yeah. It could be doable for most of us. However, this kind of thing leads to a lot of symptoms that makes relationships almost impossible.
It does. Yeah, you're numb, and I was very numb. You come home and you don't want to talk. You want to isolate yourself. If they do talk to you, you're angry, you're upset, and you don't necessarily know why. And a lot of it comes back to your cortisol levels in your body. I wasn't aware of what was going on with that. I didn't know why I felt numb, why I couldn't connect with the normal community. All I knew is when I put on my vest and my badge, that was my home. That's where I wanted to be all the time. I worked myself to death during that time because that's what I knew. That's where I felt safe. I didn't feel safe at home. I didn't know how to communicate at home. I didn't know how to be vulnerable and how to say, I'm having an issue, I'm having a problem. So that created a huge divide.
And by the way, he used to joke about the term vulnerable all the time. I'm still not real comfortable having a conversation about it.
Yeah, I hear you. It makes you kind of get that shiver when you say the word.
It does. And no matter what's going to happen, I want people to understand that Jeff and I are not going to wear matching outfits and go antiquing together. We can talk about being vulnerable.
No,
that's
sir.
about the extent of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's as far as we're going there, buddy.
One of the things that I always say is I was fine when I was on the job. I knew my role. I knew what I was supposed to do. I knew my job. And as long as adrenaline's going, was great. It's when things got quiet that the real problem started.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. And that's part of it is kind of some of those symptoms of PTSD where you're dealing with some of that stress. And the only way that you can deal with it is you have to, it's stress induced, and to get your adrenaline and those endorphins up in your body to kind of counterbalance that cortisol. So you become addicted to it. We hear of, officers all the time. I mean, I was I'm not a heights guy. I'm not anything like that. But, driving fast and drinking and doing that stuff was my escape.
Yeah.
That gave me the adrenaline rush. That got me back to feeling normal, like I was back on the job and doing that kind of thing.
Risky behavior becomes the norm for lots of us. We're talking with Jeff Stoval. He is an active law enforcement officer. He's a police sergeant in Billings, Montana. He developed PTSD from a fatal police-involved shooting he was involved in, which led to substance abuse, alcohol abuse, self-medicating, and a DWI arrest, which we will talk about when we return. This is Law Enforcement Today Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Of all the radio stations in the United States, there's only one show like ours, the Law Enforcement Today radio show. And on Facebook, there's only one official page. Do a search on Facebook for Law Enforcement Today radio show. That's Law Enforcement Today radio show on Facebook. When you get there, click like and follow. And if you're on the Clubhouse drop-in audio chat app, be sure to look for me and follow me. My name's John, the letter J, Wiley, W-I-L-E-Y. You can also search for @LET Radio Show. That's John J. Wiley, W-I-L-E-Y, @LET Radio Show on the Clubhouse drop-in audio chat app. Return to conversation with Jeff Stoval. Jeff is an active duty law enforcement officer. He's a police sergeant. He got promoted after this incident, which should let everybody know that people can be rehabilitated, that jobs can be saved, that lives can be saved, and careers can advance in spite of PTSD and in spite of substance abuse with self-medicating with alcohol and DWI arrest. And I got to say this, Jeff, before we get started, your story. I don't know of any cop anywhere who ever wants to have police involved in their life at all. And never mind being the source of having to put handcuffs on me and take me to jail for something like DUI. And it's something that we all kind of shiver when we talk about.
Yeah. It's your worst nightmare to have to wake up or even be in a car and your buddies, the guys you work with or guys that they're having you step out of the car and they're having to do their job. And, they ultimately have to arrest me for, driving under the influence of alcohol. And it's embarrassing. It is, you're so mad at yourself and ashamed because I put one of my fellow officers in that position to where he had to arrest me. We're the guys that we cover each other. We have that camaraderie. We're buddies. We do this, we do that. We cover each other on traffic stops. And not that night. On that night, I made one of the worst decisions of my life. And I drove, while I was intoxicated, tried to drive home and fell asleep at the wheel. And the lady behind me honked her horn. No response from me. And I sat there until I slept there until the police got there and I woke up. And I remember looking up and seeing, the uniform, and I immediately just knew it. And I just got out of the car and hey, I'm not going to fight this. I'm done. If I could have pled guilty that second, I tried to do everything I could to do. I owned up my actions. I realized it. And then that's kind of where life started to slowly change around for me in turn. And I started realizing some things. So
being arrested for DWI was your bottom and also kind of helped save your life.
Yeah, it did. Looking back on it, it did. When I was in the situation, I was embarrassed. I was, I had just been put on the U.S. Marshals Violent Offender Task Force. I was assigned that. I wasn't a part of the Marshals, but I was still with the Billings Police Department. But I was a part of that task force, and that was one of the dreams of mine. I had just, I'd been on the SWAT team for, almost 3 years. And another dream of mine, two of the most highly sought after positions in our department. And I got both of them. And to have your assistant chief and one of your lieutenants come over and take your badge, take your undercover vehicle, take the keys to it, and, give you a letter that says you're on administrative leave at this point, pending investigation. That's a hard thing to hear. One of my lieutenant, who's still a good friend of mine today, I remember he looked at me and he goes, "You get 24 hours to feel bad for yourself. And then you're going to get up, you're going to pull your bootstraps up just like you do every day. You're going to put your pants on and you're going to go to work. And you're going to come back and you're going to be better than this. You can fall on your sword now, and this is going to shape how the rest of all of this turns out." And that's stuck with me ever since then. I had some ups and downs, and we can even get to the point of, I one night I fell back into it. I drank a little bit again. I drank a lot that night and kept telling myself, I'm a loser. I can't ever get out of this. The world's crashing down on me. And I put my service pistol in my mouth that night. I tasted what a Glock tastes like, that cold steel on my mouth. And I was pretty doggone close. And I had a picture of my kids sitting right next to me while I was doing it. I may not be here right now, but I think God spoke to me that night and told me, "You're not going to do this," and to stop. And that night is when I committed to myself, and I committed to everyone else that they didn't know. And that's the night that my life changed. And that's, probably a couple months after my DUI.
How long ago was that?
Got my DUI in 2020. So we're looking at about 3 years now.
So a lot of people don't make it beyond that point. Look, I could tell you story after story after story. I believe that's divine intervention. I don't know why. Yeah. I don't know why some are picked and some are not. I just don't understand it. But it's obvious you've been given a second chance at life. And I got to go back to the conversation with your lieutenant. How profound was it? And it borders on what we used to hear, Jeff, was like, and different accents. I was in Baltimore, and they pronounced the word police. And the saying was, "You're the police, suck it up, buttercup. You can lick your wounds later on." And that sounds harsh. That sounds horrible, but that's what we're told all the time. It's almost what your lieutenant said to you, but he said you get 24 hours to grieve, and then you got to get busy. Yeah.
He recognized that I needed that. You have time, get your thoughts together and come up with a plan, and you're going to push through that. And then you compound that with when I went in to get my discipline from the chief, when I got removed from my units and the SWAT team and that stuff, the chief looked me in the eye and he goes, "You are going to come back better once you are done with this." And he goes, "I expect you to be better. I know you are better, and you will be better." He said, "You're going to be an example for this department of what success looks like." And he goes, "In 1 year from now, you are eligible still to put in for sergeant, and I expect you to do it." And that still brings a shiver down my neck when I talk about it. Had he not said that, I would have felt like my career was over. But he gave me hope at the end of it, is what he did. And he let me know that, we all make mistakes. We're all cops. We do, we have these behaviors sometimes. And some of us, fall victim to it. We're not victim necessarily because we're not victims, but we fall into it. We make those decisions, right? We're accountable for our decisions. But it's how you come out of the other side is the real testament to who you are as a person, as an officer, as a father, in my case, as a man of God, and hopefully as a husband again one day. Yeah. So that's my motivation. That's where I'm at.
So you're a single guy now?
I have a girlfriend. Yep. Okay. I got a girlfriend with a lot of potential, and I love her. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the reason I bring that up, Jeff, is one of the statistics that people don't want to talk about is the divorce rate with police. When I say police, that means deputies, troopers, you name it. And something changes along the way. And I like what you said earlier. I'm not going to put it on her. I can only deal with my part of it. And that was the best way I can say it. I was of the mindset, unlike today, where we're encouraged to actively talk to our spouses about what happened. We didn't talk back then because I didn't want my spouse to be more afraid. They're already afraid enough.
Right.
And I didn't want them to think that the boogeyman was right there around the corner when quite often the boogeyman was. So it's a different time, a different era, and we have different skill sets and tools now. But the end result for so many couples is divorce. And was your shooting, your PTSD, a big part of why the marriage ended?
Absolutely. when we become police officers, you don't just marry the officer, you marry that job, you marry that career. I mean, when we go to movie theaters, we want to sit in back. When we go to restaurants, we want to sit with our back against the wall, and be able to watch the door. We wear guns all the time. It's a lifestyle change. It's what we have to do to make ourselves feel safe, and that's a huge ask of somebody else who didn't make that choice to even be a police officer. So it's a huge ask for them to do it. But when we shut off, and we don't understand what the chemicals are that are going on in our brain. It's, when we go to fight or flight and we get that cortisol and that adrenaline coming in, that affects you, and your body doing that over a career.
I think you used a term earlier that can relate to isolate. We're talking to Jeff Stoval, is active law enforcement officer involved in a deadly use of force shooting, PTSD, substance abuse, DUI, you name it, but he rehabilitated his career. We're going to talk about that in a few moments on the Law Enforcement Today show. Want to win great prizes in awesome contests? Who wouldn't want that? It's easy. Just sign up and subscribe for the Law Enforcement Today radio show email newsletter. We won't spam you. No more than 2 emails a week. I promise. All subscribers are automatically entered in all future contests. Sign up at letradioshow.com. Scroll down to the sign up area. That's letradioshow.com. I'm John J. Wiley on the Law Enforcement Today show, returning our conversation with Jeff Stoval, a police sergeant in Billings, Montana. Jeff was involved in a deadly shooting, line of duty shooting. He developed post-traumatic stress disorder, substance abuse problems, self-medicating with alcohol, divorce, marriage problems, a DUI arrest, and was able to rehabilitate his career with a lot of help, which we'll talk about in a moment, and even get promoted afterwards. Jeff, I'm amazed by your story. I got to say this again. So many police, if they get an alcohol-related incident, they're arrested. Their career's over. It's not even open for discussion. The door's been shut, and you can't reopen it. There's nothing you can do, nothing you can say. My hat's off to Billings Police Department and the administration to try to rehabilitate you. I got to tell you, they're phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. They saved my life, so to speak, giving me that second chance. That's for sure.
Even with all the things that are going on, and for those that have post-traumatic stress disorder, I want people to realize this: there is life afterwards. It's not the same, absolutely, but it can be great.
Absolutely, 100%. It is. There's just dealing with it and being, again, that V word, vulnerable, right, and coming out and talking to people and telling them what's going on, and then seeking help, whether it's inpatient, whether it's outpatient, whether it's a peer support group, whether it's just friends, whether it's, religion or church or, that type of stuff. It's you got to deal with it. And it's that silent ticking time bomb in the room that nobody likes to talk about, but it can destroy your life if you let it.
One of the things you said earlier that I could really relate to is, I don't consider myself a tough guy, but I've got a lot of strong willpower, and I could solve a lot of problems, and I would apply myself to solve these problems, but I didn't realize I was using the problem to try to solve the problem, which made things worse, and I couldn't understand it.
Right. Yeah, you're kind of wrapped up in it, and you don't understand. You don't have all the answers. You don't know why. You're numb. You're, looking for certain outlets to up your adrenaline, to feel like you're at home, which is basically your work at that point. And then that becomes frustrating. And then you get in this spiral effect. You emotionally disconnected. You got a bad attitude. You're looking for substances that help out. Career setbacks. Your relationships are falling. You feel like your self-worth, and then ultimately, just like where I felt, you get those setbacks and you feel like you're not worth it all. And then you start looking at suicide as an option out.
Yeah, and here's the other thing. So many people, myself included, had to be forced into considering letting other people help. And before we go into this, because I know you didn't get to where you're at today by yourself. I know that having been there, and no one does. If we look at, let's say, two examples of pro athletes, Tom Brady, who's now retired, Patrick Mahomes, both phenomenal at what they do. Very talented, very gifted athletes, but they don't do this by themselves. They have head coaches, they have position coaches, they have sports nutritionists, they have psychologists, they have a whole team of people that help them every day. And yet, somehow or another, me as being a street cop thinks I can handle it by myself.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the mindset, right? That's what we do. We're the tough guys. We wear 15 different hats at work. We wear it all. And, we don't realize that some of these people we look to as heroes growing up as kids and that, the behind the scenes of, just like you named off, these different coaches that they have and position coaches and, life coaches and everything they've got. And we forget that.
And not to mention they have other players on the team that do their bit too to help.
Oh, yeah.
They don't get to where they're at by themselves. And if I could accept that, how is it so difficult for people like you and me to say, okay, maybe sort of I'll let you kind of try to help?
Yeah, with me, it was just I could eventually see the implosion of my life. I could see that I was caught in that spiral. And my brother, who's he's a police officer with me now, and he also was a combat veteran. And him just reaching out, and telling me, hey, this is what I went through, and just listening to him kind of talk to me about stuff that he doesn't tell anybody about. And him breaking down and talking to me kind of made me think, you know what, this is okay. I can talk to him. So he kind of led me down that path. And then another coworker of mine that was actually involved in the shooting with me, he kind of brought me the faith in God, and kind of talking. He's my best friend. He's one I confide everything in, and he was there. He said, hey, if I needed him at the drop of a hat, he was there. I called him the night when I pulled the gun out of my mouth, and he was there. And just starting to see that, breaking it down, and just the conversations that he and I had about what are you thinking, what's going on, and that just started pulling some of that stuff from deep, deep, deep down. And then as you're talking, you're like, holy cow, this feels good. Like I'm getting that weight off my chest. And so the more I talked to him, then we talked about, we got to the point of, I'm going to go see a therapist, and I'm going to go see a counselor. And, we did some pretty intense therapy with EMDR. We did some neurofeedback, hooking up and looking at my brain waves and how they were affecting when I talked about certain things, and then adjusting my therapy to that. Some substance abuse treatment with my alcohol. And, I got medication, so I didn't crave that feeling of adrenaline with drinking anymore, and just kind of reshaping my life. And once I was able to have those people that supported me, and kind of feel the love and bring you in, then that's kind of where, along with, divine intervention, as we talked about before, but you put those three together, and it became pretty powerful for me.
So what was the end result is, we'll talk about it in just a moment, but you couldn't have gotten there if you didn't reach out for help. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. And having some of those guys that, the chief saying what he told me about, he expects me to put in, he gave me that I was still worth something. And then my lieutenant telling me that, you're going to get 24 hours and then you're going to go back to work, man. You got stuff to do. You're going to get to it. And kind of giving me like, you're going to take accountability, but then you're going to work too. You're going to get there. And putting those little pieces in my head, they didn't necessarily click that day, right? Or a couple months down the road, they didn't quite click yet, but it started setting the groundwork. And then as other people come in your life and you start seeing other things, those pieces of the puzzle start falling in place. And then they're like, I get why he told me that. I get what the chief saw in me. I get why my buddy came over right when I called him and what he told me. And then you start rebuilding yourself again, and you come back stronger and better than you've ever been.
Please do me a big favor. When you have a chance and you talk to those people, tell them I said thank you for what they did.
Absolutely.
When they talk to you and the support they gave afterwards. Now, speaking of support, you've got Montana Leo Peer Support Network. By the way, you can find them on Facebook as a part of, I don't want to say advocacy, because that's right with that vulnerable word. It's a group that's helped you get to where you're at today. How would you describe what they do?
Yeah, I'm secretary of the board with us, MTPSN, or Montana Peer Support Network. We educate, we identify stress, we educate about stress and these different chemicals going on, the workplace stressors, occupational, all those things. And then we educate, we show you what the issues are, why we act the way we do, how we react to things, how we react to stress. And then we get you the solutions too. We give you the resources. We give you those tools so that you're not left in the dark. So, so many times you go to a lot of these law enforcement classes and they tell you why you're so screwed up. They tell you that you're really screwed up, and then they leave it at that, or they try and give you a card and say, here, come see me. Well, we're nonprofit. We don't make money off this. This is volunteer from all across the state. We're the first one in the nation to do this. And we go out, we educate these departments, and then we have people that come up and talk to us, and we go into each communities and we vet therapists, we vet, places where they can go in retreats and do those type of things. And we set those up ourselves. So that's kind of where we're at. We're trying to break down the stigma. We're breaking down those walls, and we're on a mission. We want to stop that officer suicide rate. We want to bring that way down. We want to bring down, the divorce rate, and we want to educate not just officers, but their families and their spouses too, because they're all in it together, and it's a team. And when you have that team, you're a pretty formidable foe when it comes to PTSD and that type of stuff. So we're bringing awareness, and we're giving tools.
Now, That's Montana Leo Peer Support Network. Right now, the only place to find your organization is on Facebook. Am I correct?
Correct. Yep. So we just actually, lights went on in January, a couple months back here. So we're going to have a website coming up. We'll do the announcement and stuff on our Facebook page right now. But we've got our Facebook page up and rolling in that. And then we're bouncing around. I'll be out doing the Special Olympics out in Fairmont. It's outside Anaconda, Montana. I'll be out teaching our class, Getting Through the Grind, which is our introductory class, so to speak, the educational portion of it. And then we got a few other ones planned around the state.
Awesome.
We got some in Helena. We're just bouncing around, getting
Jeff,
the word out.
Thanks so much for your service, and really thanks for being a guest on Law Enforcement Today's show. Very much appreciated.
It's an honor, and I appreciate it, and thank you so much for what you do.
I'd like to thank our guests so much for coming on the Law Enforcement Today radio show. The Law Enforcement Today radio show is a nationally syndicated radio show broadcast on numerous stations once a week and growing. If you enjoyed the podcast version of the show, please do me a big favor. Tell a friend. I'll be back in just a couple days with a brand new episode of the Law Enforcement Today radio show and podcast. Until then, this is John J. Wiley. See ya.
Shop the Sherwin-Williams Memorial Day sale and get 30% off paints and stains May 16th through the 26th. With prices starting at $34.29, it's the perfect time to transform your space with color. Whether you're looking to revamp your bedroom, living room, or home office, we have you covered with bold hues, soothing neutrals, and everything in between. Shop the sale online or visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store. Click the banner to learn more. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.